He's John McMullen. I'm Jordan McDonald. That makes us Mac and Mac. And here from his summer abode, the getting back to work, Chris Franklin. Franklin, how's your summer going?
It's been going great. I'm trying to get myself back into the swing of things. It's been off since the 29th. So I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. Took a cruise, went to the Caribbean. And this is the most laid back until I've been.
Yeah. Yes. And poor Chris Franklin. He goes from the Caribbean to Jody McDonald and John McMullen. That is a deep dive.
No, it's a good thing. You know, I feel honored that you guys have me on. So you know what? There's no drop there at all, guys. I appreciate it.
Back to work, Franklin. That's what we gotta say. Get back to work, Frank. No, we always appreciate when you come on board with us. All right, we haven't talked to you in about a month. We just ran down a list of all the offseason moves the Eagles made. Unfortunately, Glenn Herbie from Eagles Wire didn't put Jalen Hurts' contract extension as one of the Eagles offseason moves. I don't know how he figured that out, but that was the biggest one. We all expect Jalen Hurts to come back and be very similar to the player that he was last year. Is that fair? The contract says he's supposed to. They got the deal done. They're committed to him. He's committed to them. We know where everybody's mindset is. Can Jalen Hurts have as good or a better year this year than he did this past year when he was MVP runner-up?
I know it's going to be tough to say this, especially when you put up the numbers that he did. I mean, he was in the conversation for even offensive player of the year too, but I think he can have an even better year. I think he's even more comfortable with this offense and the system, and I think he's continuing to improve as a thrower as well too. I mean, you saw the touch that he developed on those passes, especially the deep passes, the intermediate ones. And as he gets used to seeing these different coverages even more and more and more, and with this complement of receivers that he has, I think when you look at the his completion percentage can even go up even higher, I think, because they're going to trust more passes to the running back. So I think overall his completion percentage, I think, should go up. I think his yards will still continue to go up. The only thing I think it could go down is the rushing touchdown. So I think the passing touchdown number goes higher.
Yeah, I mean, and I think if you talk to the Eagles, Chris, they would say, you know, and in fact, they constantly say, if you look at Jalen Hurts dating back to Alabama, he's gotten better every single year. Every single year he's got incrementally better. But here's my thing. He could get better. He might be a better quarterback and have a worse statistical season. Do you think that's possible?
I think anything's possible. But I think when you look, even with these defenses that they're playing against, and even if they find themselves, even if with this tougher schedule, and they find themselves down or whatever, I think they're going to have to pass the ball more. So that means they're going to get those numbers go up and continue to go up as well too. But I think overall it's possible. But looking at what he was able to, just looking at, like you said, that projection and looking to what he's shown in the past and his continued trajectory, I think it's going to be a lot better. I think it's going to be a lot better when all's said and done.
You mentioned the fact that his numbers might get better because he gets more yards passing to the backs out of the backfield. They went out and got DeAndre Swift, one of the best receiving backs in the league last year. The Eagles were not only not good throwing the ball to the running back last year, they're flat out bad. It was not a major part of their offense. Brian Johnson replaces Shane Steichen, but it's still Nick Sirianni's offense. Is it solely because of the Swift acquisition that you think they're going to throw it that much more to the running back this year? Because John and I kind of poo-poo that because we just don't think it's going to happen. We think Jalen Hurts, when he gets to his third check down, is I'm going to take off and run and make 10 or 12 with my own feet, then dump it down to a back to get 3 or 4. Even with the Swift addition, I don't think the numbers are going up drastically. Why do you?
I think so, because I think it might be the rope, just because what you can do and the potential what you can do is free some other things up. I think you use the rope-a-dope effect, where you use those swing passes like extended handoffs, picking up 3, 4, 5, and then we saw over time teams were starting to put those cornerbacks back because they didn't want to give it the big play to A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, what have you downfield. So when teams start to see you start to dink and dunk even a little bit as well too, so that way you just get the ball out quickly so he doesn't have to run, they're going to start putting those corners a little bit more. And then now it's like, okay, you want to do that? Have at it. You can take more shots downfield. So that's why I think it may be a concerted effort early on to get that done. When you see them time and time again working on that stuff, OJ, stuff like that. So I think when all said and done, it's going to be those numbers are going to improve that because Miles Sanders for what he was and everything else, the receiving part of that game wasn't the biggest. What wasn't his strength when it came to that.
That is true. Miles, he was so good his rookie season, didn't develop from there. That was the one disappointment. But he had a great year running the football. I'm more concerned when it comes to the running back. How do they replace that 1,269 yards? From your perspective, Chris, does it come down to another lead back, or is it going to be strict committee? Is it going to?
It's going to be committee with the lean towards Swift. I really think it's going to be like that, and the fact that and I hate using the pie analogy or something like that, I could see him getting about like 30%. Penny if he sticks on, about 25, and then you get Gainwell on the third downs and Scott here and there if you need to give other breathers as well too. I think that committee effect, especially given the injury history with Swift and Penny, I think that way it keeps him fresher, keeps him away from that, and that way you continue to cycle, you get the most out of these guys, and you see what you roll from there on out. So, because I think if you continue to pound Swift over and over again, I mean, we saw the shoulder, everything else. We saw what happened with the Lions. So, give it a committee look. They'll continue to cycle through that way and that approach. So teams even also won't focus on one guy when it comes to their offense.
All right, you gave a percentage number there, so I'm going to hold you to another percentage number because you mentioned it. John has mentioned it before. I just don't think it's going to happen. I won't put a 0 on it, but percentage chance Rashad Penny is not with the Eagles when the year starts. What would you put it at?
I'd probably say 40. 35, 40, somewhere in that range.
That he's not with the Eagles.
He's not.
Yeah, it's a possibility. It's a bigger possibility than people realize.
Yeah, I'm with the people on this one. I don't think they're cutting him. I don't think there's any, unless he's hurt, and that could very well happen. And then it's going to be an injury settlement.
I mean, if he has a great summer, they're not cutting him. But if he has a Jaquiski Tart summer, they're cutting him. I mean,
that's the name I was going to bring up.
Yeah,
that's the name I was going to bring up because I thought when we saw him come in, it's like, okay, wow, we got this guy here. And then we saw him. It's like, yeah. And then the money he was making, it's like, okay, it's not a big, huge cap hit or anything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, but Rashad Penny, when he's been at the top of his game, is better than Jaquiski Tart ever was at the top of his game.
That's true, but, you can point that Tart was a long-time starter, as I pointed out, on a very good defense typically, and far more durable. So you didn't have those issues. So there's like a give and take. Talent, yes. But nobody's saying if Rashad Penny's healthy, and everything's copacetic, yeah, he's going to be on the team. But I'm saying if there's a hamstring and he's missing 2 weeks, it doesn't even have to be an ACL or a broken fibula. If he's not out there, and all of a sudden Nick Sirianni keeps talking about Trey Sermon, and he knows Swift's going to be here. Swift and Gainwell are the two locks, like 100%. They're going to be here. Everybody else, even Boston. Look, I mean, if Penny plays well and Trey Sermon plays well, they might say, hey, thanks for the memories, Boston. I don't think that's likely to happen. But other than Swift and Gainwell, everybody else, they got to perform this summer.
Somebody's got to go. You don't think they're keeping 5 on the roster?
No.
So somebody's got to go.
No.
I thought it was very interesting.
I don't think it's going to be Penny. And sorry, even though the coach tries to sneak in the Trey Sermon looks great in practice line every once in a while. He's the most likely candidate.
I mean, they chalked up Carrie Vincent and Tay Gowan as well. And we're Carrie Vincent and Tay Gowan today. So yeah, it's possible. All right, I'm going to throw you in the deep end of the Caribbean since get you back. The juice is flowing. I saw this. I thought it was interesting. Entering training camp, Chris Franklin, 1 trade, 1 free agent signing, and 1 extension for the Eagles throughout training camp. What do you think?
I can see the trade being, especially toward the end of it, with a player for player, especially like that after the second week, just to give them time to check it out.
And Eli Harold for Ryan Bates trade,
or not Eli Ricks, for
Dennis
somebody else,
Kelly for Dorial Green Beckham.
something like that. Something along those
Dorial
lines
Green
was like,
Beckham was going to come here and be Randy White, Randy Moss like in some people's eyes. That was funny. That was funny.
Come on, didn't they know they didn't know how to use him? Come on, everybody do this. He had a shot to do.
Jordan Matthews for Ronald Darby, and they had to get
that
Jordan.
Was legit. That was a legit NFL trade. Yeah,
that was a legit trade.
That was good, but yeah, I think it's going to be one of those back end of the roster who they want a veteran, maybe even a veteran who they think, hey, you know what, we'll give him a shot to go somewhere else a week before, see if he can latch on with that team. The signing, I don't think it's going to be anything big. If anything, I think it's going to be as soon as the camp's over, I'm going to say, let me check the waiver wire, see anybody else who can we throw maybe on a practice squad fringe guy. And what was the other one I saw? I remember there was a trade.
Contract extension. I know my.
They do have a history.
I know
they do have a history of doing that right before. I mean, we look at my lot and everything else.
Yeah. So you got to look at the 2020 draft. You got to look at the Jalen Hurts draft. I think it's pretty obvious because he's important.
Well, we know Jalen Rager's gone, so
I'm going to go. All right, I'm going to Jack Driscoll.
I don't know.
Swing tackle, important role. He's got to be the swing tackle now, not just right tackle. He's the ripcord at right guard. He's got to be the left tackle. If Jordan gets banged up, you extend him. You don't got to pay him a lot. Lock him down.
I'll wait. I'm not too thrilled with him. I like him as a right tackle, as a backup right tackle. I like him as a backup right guard. On the left tackle side, they better hope Mailata doesn't go down because just seeing him, I know it was that one game against the Cardinals. Seeing that, I was like, nah, this. I don't think he aligns right on that left side. I think he's more of a right side guy. I just take my chances because I don't see him being I don't see somebody giving him a chance to be a starter in this league. I think he's good for what he is. So I think that's when you might be able to get him.
So what you're telling me, Chris Franklin, you're worried about no Andre Dillard. That's what you're telling
me.
I
am.
Yeah, they never got the Andre Dillard extension done either, John.
Well, you can't get that done. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, Andre got what did he get? $9 million a year. You can't pay a backup tackle $9 million a year. You can pay Jack Driscoll. You give him $2 million, he'll be thrilled. Give me the paper.
That's going to be the mindset that I can get a starting job elsewhere.
No,
you might not think it. Might think it. His agent will be thinking it that hey, these guys come off the Eagles. You're under Stoutland. Other teams will give you a chance to compete and start for a job.
Well,
and I'm on record with this. I don't think he's in the mix for right guard. For a very specific reason, because he is the backup left tackle and he is the backup right tackle. So they're going to keep him available.
He is break glass in case of emergency. So if Cam Jurgens can't play guard and Tyler Steen isn't ready, that's the only way they go to Jack Driscoll. But he is a ripcord. He's the ripcord at right guard. It's like Cam can't play it. Tyler's not ready. Jack could be competent. That's the only way it happens. Yeah.
And then you better hope to goodness if that happens. I think you got a lot more questions on that offensive line if that's the case. But
well, that would piss off Jeff Stoutland because then you could do it that way. You could say Jack's playing right guard, and if Jordan gets banged up or Lane gets banged up, he kicks out the tackle, and then he hates moving parts,
right?
So he doesn't want to do that. So it would be a worst case scenario.
And I take my chances on Stoutland developing a young guy that even if undrafted free, we saw before, what happened off the field with Sills. We saw what happened when he joined them, and you see when he's done with a lot of these younger guys in development. Yeah. And so I mean,
they always give him one. Last year it was Josh Sills, and Josh got in trouble. Obviously, some serious legal issues, but he remains on the commissioner's exempt list. They always seem to give him that one young guy he loves Trevor Reed, Louisville. That's my prediction. Really athletic. He's got NFL ability, but he's not strong enough. They got to get him in the weight room. I think he's the guy they're going to stash on the back end of the roster. Little hint for everybody. But I haven't seen him. He might show up and be awful.
I like
But
Tyrese
that's my
Robinson too.
prediction. Yeah.
Tyrese Robinson for me. I like that one too, but I think he might be the guy I'll go home. I think when you look at the way he finishes, the way he works in that proverbial phone booth that they like to say the guard, I'm keeping an eye on him. I think he might be the one that sneaks on that one.
Well, they have Tyrese Robinson, they have Fred Johnson, Roderick Johnson. You know what? I think it was Jordan we were talking to in the offseason. And Jordan was trying to come up with those guys, and for the life of him, he couldn't come up with them.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, just say, if you just throw out the most Darian Johnson, yeah, you got him. All right, cool.
We haven't had you on in a while, Chris Franklin. I know you saw him during the off-season OTAs, or call them what you want. How big a factor is Olamide Zaccheaus going to be? Addition during the offseason, pretty much purely a slot guy, undersized, but you've got two damn good outside receivers. So your third wide receiver is usually your slot guy. Quez plays a lot in there when he's on the field. Is Zaccheaus going to be able to get past Quez and become the Eagles' third wide receiver?
I think they're going to stick with Quez being the third guy, just for a speed element and putting the pressures on safety. But I could see them when they go 4 or even 4 wide, maybe throw Goddard in on a slot. I could see him playing a role like Jason Avant. I think he's that good of a guy to find the space in the middle. He's another guy. When we mentioned Hurts earlier, improving each year. Zaccheaus is another guy who's improved each year as well too. He's gotten more and more comfortable in the slot, and I could see him being a guy where he knows where sticks is. He's going to flash right big enough for where Hurts can try to find him. He throws it first down. He keep the chains moving. I think he's that type of guy in there. And I mean, I think more when I think about it, putting more like 4 or 5 wide outs might actually be beneficial for the Eagles, because not only do you stretch it, you still got the threat of having Jalen run, and then you still got those two guys in the slot. You still have a running back next to it. So I think overall, I don't think he passes Quez, but I still think Quez, for what they want him to do in his role in that offense, is still very, very important. But I think Zaccheaus could play a pivotal role in being like your first down guy.
The Eagles play a lot of empty sets, Chris. So, they're going to have 4 or 5 wides at a time. And usually, it's Kenny Gainwell in that instance sort of kicking out. But in that sort of same vein, how about doing it a different way? How relevant is Dan Arnold? Can Dan Arnold make this football team? Because I got to tell you, Chris, we only saw him for 100 minutes, but he was worlds above everybody else not named Dallas Goedert at tight end as a receiver. I mean, he was miles ahead of everybody else, including Calcaterra.
When they initially signed him, I'm like, wait a minute, he does a lot of the same stuff that Jack Stoll does. Not only just when it comes to like being like the block, like that one. That's the thing, and that's why I think it's important, because you take him away. If you add it, like I think that will be the battle even between. I think the battle is more between Stoll and him. I think Stoll gives you more value as a blocker, and then you start looking like, okay, Arnold and Calcaterra. Well, unless they say they only want to take Stoll off special teams and use him more 12. I just don't see him. I think they would rather stick with Calcaterra, letting him see if he comes back to a second year, develop, see if he improved as a blocker as well too, as opposed to giving Arnold. Arnold is a good guy if you want on your practice squad. I'd take him as a practice squad guy, but I don't see him making this team.
And even though he's a veteran, he can now be on the practice squad, because they change the practice squad rules every single year and just make it more and more viable for veteran guys to be on the practice squad. You think he'd get Johnny? You think he'd get snacked up if he were on a practice squad? You think another team would pick him off and sign him onto their roster?
I don't think there's a big concern, because he was out there for a while as a free agent, right. So everybody had their shot.
I think Chris is right. I think that's legitimate.
My only point is this is a Super Bowl contender, and like, he's 28, right? If they were a bad team, I'd go, yeah, Calcaterra, keep the upside. But I think this is a guy who can help you in situations. He's a better blocker right now than Calcaterra. He's a better receiver than Calcaterra. They're a Super Bowl contender. I'm keeping Dan Arnold, and I'm trying to get Calcaterra on the practice squad. He can help me in a big situation. I don't think Grant's going to help me. That's where I would be. But if it were a bad team, I'd be the exact opposite. So I think that guy can help a Super Bowl contender.
And you know what's crazy? The one name we haven't mentioned at all that probably I can see being picked up by somebody else just because of the size and everything, Tyree Jackson. I mean, we thought all this time that he was going to be the guy there, but unless there is another phantom injury that pops up late in training camp, I think somebody scoops him up. I mean, it's just they're just deep at that position, and I really thought at one point I thought he was going to be like a second tight end just because of his size and what he did. But
so he did nothing in the 100 minutes you guys saw when he was out there, Tyree Jackson. That Arnold was the only other tight end you saw other than Dallas Goedert.
Well, Arnold is a legit NFL tight end. I mean, he's caught a bunch of passes. He bounces around because he can't block at all, but he's a really good.
And how bad does that make Dallas Calcaterra as a blocker? If you go, he can't block at all, but he's a better blocker than Calcaterra.
But there's a lot. There's a lot of, especially younger tight ends. They do one or the other. Like there are no more Dallas Goederts. There's George Kittles. They're a endangered species who can do both. We got a guy who can block. We got a guy who can catch the football. That's why I think Stoll is safe because he's the blocker. I don't think Calcaterra is safe because Arnold's here. And Arnold can catch the football. He is significantly better than any other tight end they have catching the football because he understands the position. He's savvy. He's got great hands, a little bit of athleticism. You're right. I mean, Tyree's a quarterback trying to play tight end. He's got tremendous athleticism, tremendous size. The play he hurt his back on that was like the Jalen Reagor of tight end plays. Remember Jalen's one-handed catch? Tyree's catch where he broke the bone in his back there's few people in the world who can make that play, but it's not consistently there is how I would describe it.
Yeah, anytime you can impress Mike Quick and Harold Carmichael. I was sitting when Tyree, I was standing right next to him. They were watching the play, and he came down with that thing. It's like, ooh, the fact you impressed those guys with a catch. That's a big thing. But then it's all I was like, you just saw all the potential you had in the tight end fades, the mesh routes in the middle with that size. There's so much he can do. It's just maybe he pops up out of nowhere and he has a really good camp, puts things together, stays healthy. Maybe he puts a fight in for that third one. Maybe he becomes that candidate that gets traded because he plays so well. They just don't have the room. They trade him to a team that's looking for a tight end, and maybe the Eagles get something back, like another player, maybe I don't know, safety or what have you. And as you can see in the last week, maybe he becomes that guy, but there is a logjam at that position right now.
All right, let me get both of you guys scouting reports on two important guys for the Eagles this upcoming year. And again, all you've seen is a handful of minutes. Johnny keeps throwing the number 100 minutes out there. Not a whole hell of a lot of time to be able to judge something, but Eagles' new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. The way that they comport themselves during these practices. We've all been around workouts and preseason stuff. Some guys are hands-on. Some guys are yellers and screamers. Some guys wait till after practice is over. Let's get back in the room and look at the tape, and I'll do my teaching there. What do you see out of the new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator in practices? What kind of practice coach are they going to be?
I think when you look at Brian Johnson, he reminds me like that Todd Bowles type where you just go, okay, yeah, you just chill, that calm demeanor. I mean, he could be completely different. Like I've talked about, I've heard anything different that goes different from that, but he can be completely different behind closed doors. Like, yeah, you guys, what were you missing that one? But I haven't heard that in anything at all yet. So I think he's more of the chill, like, hey, listen, this is what you do here, this is what you do here, and like that steadying course that keeps you all away. I just wanted to side. I saw a couple of times. I wasn't really looking at him per se. I just know a couple of times looked over, like whatever different play he was getting hyped up around, they like around stuff like that. So I can see him. I think it's going to be more of a steadying force. Everybody just looking at the calm, like guys who aren't going to go, well, okay, yeah, like just. I can't say that because of person, but it's like not burrowing in somewhere. Oh, no, like
don't worry about it.
All right, cool. He won't be on their ass just going like, oh, what's going on this one? You ain't gonna do this, but still, it's.
No, I think they both look really comfortable. Brian. One of the things, I mean, I probably put too much into this, but like Brian will say hi to us on the sideline and like he's comfortable in his own skin. Whereas a lot of times young coaches are like, all right, I gotta be buttoned up. I can't be showing off to the head coach that I'm comfortable and focused. I think he's really in his own skin. He's really confident in his abilities. I don't have any problems. And I think Sean Desai, and I think we saw it in his opening press conference, he gets Philadelphia. I think he gets Philadelphia more than Jonathan Gannon. Like I say it all the time. Maybe it was his time at Temple. He understands they're going to play the same philosophy, but he understands you got to brand it correctly in Philadelphia. You got to talk about aggression and palpable. He uses that word. And everybody's like, yeah, we're going to be aggressive and palpable. And they're going to be playing the same stinking defense. But I think it buys goodwill, for lack of a better term.
All right, see, Franklin, last question for me. 2 players that will have major influence potentially against the Eagles this year have a deadline of 4 o'clock this afternoon. Tony Pollard and Saquon Barkley, both franchise tagged, have till 4 o'clock to get a long-term contract deal done. Either one of them going to get a new deal done. Either one of them going to be saying, all right, I'm not showing up. Screw you and your franchise tag. What's going to happen with Mr. Pollard and Mr. Barkley this afternoon? Are they just going to be facing off against the Birds twice apiece under the franchise offer?
I think neither one of them, personally, I think neither one of them is going to sign long term. I think Pollard reports, and I think Barkley maybe be the one that doesn't report. I think Barkley's going to say, you know what? And it's the thing, I'm your offense. And I know Daniel Jones, I know everyone say, oh, Daniel Jones made his leap. Well, if you don't have Saquon Barkley next to him, you need Daniel Jones by himself to win a game. If I'm the Eagles, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, oh, this is the guy? All right, cool. I know he got Waller and everything, but this is the guy? Fine. And Pollard, I don't know what it is. This is all setting up for Zeke to go back. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like that. Pollard's a decent player. I don't know, given that we know about the running back position, given what we've seen these other guys get. I know they want bigger money, but I just don't see teams doing that, especially this late. This late today, even with the extensions.
You know what I think? At C. Franklin News, Chris, I think Saquon's taking the summer off, baby. A week before, week
show
one,
up.
then he'll sign the franchise tag and say, all right, let's go. Let's go.
What veteran wants to go to training camp and practice in the heat?
If I'm Pollard, I'm doing the same thing.
Well,
who the Cowboys going to give the ball to if not Pollard week 1, even if he doesn't show up till the last week of camp?
Dak might have 56 passing attempts that first game if that's the case.
I don't think you want to do that because you don't want to see Dak getting hurt if you're the Cowboys. Chris Franklin, glad to know a couple of things. Number 1, you got the great tan during the summer. Number 2, had a great time in the Caribbean. Number 3, still got the birds at the house. They were chirping in very effectively today. Give them a lot of credit for that. Good to have you back in the mix, brother. You know how often we're going to tap into you during the year. Thanks for doing it with us today.
Hey, it's precious. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks. It was fun as always.
Chris Franklin from NJ.com. Follow him there. Does a great job covering the Eagles day in and day out. Like McMullen, like a lot of other Eagle Beat guys who will be punching up all week. See who's not still on vacation before everybody shows up at the NovaCare Complex next week. Mac coming back to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku,